Okay. Okay. This piece now. Yeah, we need to trim more of this one.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Dottie, and in this video I'm going to be telling the story of why I had to take Mochi to the emergency vet the week of August 14th. Before I get into that, I just want to say that I like to give a lot of details in my stories, so if this video turns out to be a longer video, I'm not sorry. Also, I'm going to be using the terms primary vet and emergency vet to distinguish between Mochi's primary vet at Petco and the emergency vet in Chinatown, Los Angeles. Alright, let's get started with the story. On Monday, August 14th, I took Mochi to his primary vet, Petco, which is called Vetco, and he received 2 vaccines, the feline 3-in-1 FVRCP vaccine and the feline leukemia vaccine. So that was in the morning, like at 8:30 I think in the morning, and then I took him home, and when lunchtime came around, I fed all the cats lunch like I do every day. Then at 3 p.m. Mochi threw up his lunch. I didn't find it a concern. I thought maybe it was just he just wasn't feeling well with the vaccines and that he would be fine the next day. Then at 5 p.m. that day, he did like this gagging / wheezing episode.
Okay. Okay. This piece now. More of this one.
Which he had done before, like I think a week prior or 2 weeks prior. He had these episodes and it was just the one time, but he did it 3 times in this one moment where he was doing this like gagging, wheezing episode 3 in a row, and after that he didn't do it again until after he got these 2 vaccines. In addition, he had thrown up. So I was getting a little bit concerned at that point, but not too concerned, because I thought maybe after the day he would be fine. Then I fed all the animals their dinner at 6 p.m. and 2 hours later at 8 p.m. Mochi threw up again for a second time. And then my worry at that point rose a little bit more, but I just chalked it up to he's just not feeling well because he got these 2 vaccines. And then around 9:30 I fed the cats treats. I like to feed them treats before I go to bed, so I fed them treats, and then I went to bed. At 2 a.m. the next day, on Tuesday, 2 in the morning, I heard Mochi wanting to throw up. So I heard the gagging / wheezing sounds. I immediately woke up and he threw up. And my worry at that point at 2 o'clock in the morning was like, okay, if he throws up his breakfast, which I feed at 6 o'clock in the morning to the cats, if he throws up his breakfast, then I'm gonna call Petco and make an appointment to bring him in. In the morning, I fed him. He was hanging out with me. He seemed fine. But then 10 o'clock came and he threw up again. So now that's 3 p.m., 8 p.m., 2 a.m. and 10 a.m. 4 times he threw up. It's been 24 hours and he still was throwing up. So I called Petco and I told them that he was throwing up every single time he ate. A few hours later he would throw up. So they were able to squeeze me in for a 2 p.m. appointment, and I took him there at 2 p.m. and they examined him, and he seemed fine. I explained the gagging / wheezing motion he had done. I even had taken a video of it, but they thought that the video showed gagging and not wheezing. And I thought, in my opinion, it was wheezing. And my fiance also, when he initially had done the 3 attacks for the wheezing episode the week or 2 weeks prior, he also had said that it sounded like it was wheezing. But his vet said that it was gagging. So I took it as gagging. And then we were focused on his stomach. There's, something going on with his stomach. She was asking me if he eats anything that's not edible, which he does, or he tries to. He tries to eat plastic, he tries to eat cardboard. I saw him try to eat a push pin once. Plastic that's like harder and sharp, so not like plastic bag or saran wrap, like hard plastic. So that cat really worries me because he will try to eat anything and everything. So that was the focus, was his stomach. His primary vet gave him anti-vomit medication and fluids, and then said to just monitor him, and if he throws up again, then the next step would need to be x-rays to see what's inside his stomach. And if he didn't throw up, he was fine. So after the shots that they gave him for the liquids and the anti-vomit, I took him home and he ate dinner at 6 p.m. and he didn't throw it up, which was great. And then I gave, all the cats treats, and I went to bed. Wednesday morning at 2:30 in the morning on Wednesday, I heard a cry, a meow. I woke up and I thought, did I hear that? Or was that in my head? And I heard the cry again. So I got up, I looked for who was crying, and it was Mochi. He was sleeping in his little cat tunnel when I found him, and he didn't look very good. Once he came out, he looked really tired, like he hadn't slept all night. He was moving slow, and he was licking his lips excessively and crying. It sounded like he was in pain, he was suffering, and I did not know if I had to take him to the vet at 2:30 in the morning. I did not know. I was very worried, and because his primary vet had said maybe there's something in his stomach, something concerning in there, I thought it was a life-threatening situation. And what I was thinking in my head is, if I asked the vet, what if he doesn't throw up, but he's crying and he's licking his lips and he doesn't look very good? Should I bring him in? I'm just, going through a scenario in my mind. And in my mind, the vet said, yes, he needs to be seen immediately. In conjunction with what I was thinking in my head for that conclusion, I was also thinking about, I used to have a pet hamster, and her name was Sushi. I loved that hamster so much, but she had died on the operating table during surgery. By that point, it was too late for her. What had happened was that there was a tumor inside of her that grew so big that it crushed all her insides, all her organs.
as a last attempt to save her, I took her in to a vet to operate on her to get the tumor removed. But it was, like I said, too late. So, when thinking about Mochi and something in his stomach or in his body, I didn't want it to be too late for him. So I called my fiance like 2:45 in the morning while I'm trying to think what to do. And I tell him, I think we gotta take Mochi to an emergency vet because he's crying, he's licking his lips, he looks tired, he's not looking very well. So while I packed up Mochi and Odie in the car to drive down to the valley and pick up my fiance to take Mochi to the vet, my fiance was busy calling every single emergency 24-hour vet that he could find online and from other emergency vets to see if anybody could take Mochi, could see Mochi. But he had called 6 different vets and not one of them wanted to see Mochi. The reasons that were given were they didn't want to see a kitten, a 13-week-old kitten, or they weren't seeing new patients. I don't know how you can be an emergency vet and not take in new patients. And how can you not be an emergency vet and not see kittens, no matter what age they are? They need help. I don't understand. Luckily, on the 7th phone call that he made, they said yes. Bring him in. We'll squeeze you in between appointments and we'll see your cat Mochi. Thank you. Unfortunately, it was in the middle of LA in Chinatown. For me, that is so far away. I don't live in LA. It's like an hour and a half to 2 hours to get to the heart of LA. So we arrived at the vet at 5 o'clock in the morning in Chinatown, and they put us in a room and they had to take a parvo test, I believe it was called, and quarantined us, basically treated us that my cat Mochi was positive with parvo, which I guess is, I don't know what parvo is, honestly, I don't know what it is, but they quarantined us until he could take the test, and the test came back negative for parvo, so we were no longer under quarantine, he was fine. So they took Mochi in the back, and they said that they would call us when the doctor had a chance to examine him. So while Mochi was at the vet, they said it could be a long time till they called us. So we went to grab some breakfast at this cafe that was just like 5 minutes away, called Nick's Cafe, and we got some breakfast there, and the food was really good. So the doctor did a physical exam on him. They called us to ask if they could do some x-rays on Mochi to see inside his abdominal, his stomach area, and see what's in there. So I said yeah to do the x-rays. So here's the conclusion from the x-rays. I will read it. It says moderate amount of gastric content, including mineral. The soft tissue content could be food and or admixed foreign material, the latter given the concurrent presence of gastric mineral. A small intestinal mechanical obstruction is absent at this time. Consider observed fasting for the next 6 hours with supportive care and repeat abdominal radiography to ensure there's no delay in gastric emptying. Okay, so what that meant
was that they wanted me to fast Mochi and then take x-rays again, but at his primary Vetco. So that's what I did. I called Vetco and explained that Mochi needs to fast and to redo the x-rays. Let me tell you, the emergency vet x-rays, they were so pricey. It was almost $800 just to do the x-rays. He did test positive for Giardia, which they gave me medication for. He's fine with that, but yeah, it was a very pricey trip that day, and that's not where it ends. So anyways, he fasted Wednesday night, and I had the appointment Thursday at Petco to redo his x-rays on an empty stomach. So I took him in, they did the x-rays, they had to send the x-rays out to a specialist, so that was also really expensive. That was nearly $500 for them to do the x-rays and then send it out to a specialist. And so, oh my god, what they told me, so the results of the x-rays when they called me, because they called me a few hours later to tell me the results of his x-rays, and it was very concerning. I could not repeat, like I'm looking at the x-ray right now, I could not tell you, I can't remember what the concern was, but apparently it looked like there was something in his stomach, or that his stomach was being displaced by something, and that he needs an ultrasound immediately. So that day on Thursday, they called the emergency vet where I took him to and explained that Mochi needs an ultrasound and that I would be driving there ASAP to get him in for an ultrasound. So I drove down there, but when we got there, we waited until 6 p.m. when they told us that they couldn't fit in Mochi for an ultrasound that day because their ultrasound specialist was only going to be there until 6 p.m. So we didn't get seen that day. We drove all the way to Chinatown and didn't get him an ultrasound, but they told us to come back the next day on Friday. So we came back the next day. They told me to be there at 8:30 in the morning, so I was there at 8:30 in the morning, and I took my fiance's sister with me because my fiance didn't want me to go alone, just in case the worst happened, okay? Like, we were thinking the absolute worst at this point. It was so devastating, it was so scary, it was so stressful. It was awful. We had cried the night before because we just didn't know what was going on with Mochi and what was going to happen. Anyways, they took him and they said it would be an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, however long, until the doctor could fit Mochi in and get an ultrasound. So we left, we went to the diner that me and my fiance had gone the previous time, and I took his sister there. We waited for the phone call, and I did get the phone call while we were there, and what she said over the phone was that there was nothing blocking his stomach or anything wrong with any of his organs, which was great news. Don't get me wrong. It was wonderful news that the worst was not going to happen. But that left us with not knowing, then why is he throwing up his food? Why is he meowing and licking his lips? And the doctor understood that. So what she did was look back at the 2 sets of x-rays and she said that there was like activity in his lungs. She doesn't know what type of activity, but that there was activity. So she gave him medication for the bacteria or infection or whatever it was in his lungs to hopefully remove it. And also, I had sent the video of him doing like the gagging, wheezing episode, and she said that she looked back at that video. Initially with that video, I had also sent it to the emergency vet. When I showed Petco the video, they said it wasn't wheezing, it was gagging. When I showed it to the emergency vet, they also agreed that it wasn't wheezing, it was gagging.
Okay. Okay. This piece now. Yeah, we need to trim more of this one.
But on this phone call, she said, I looked back at that video and she changed her mind that it wasn't gagging and that it was wheezing, which would align with the activity in his lungs. If either vet had said that it was wheezing and not gagging, then maybe we didn't have to go through all this and spend $2,000 for Mochi to get 2 sets of x-rays and an ultrasound. Anyways, so she gave me medication for his lungs. I finished that medication and he's been fine since. You know, if the worst case scenario, at least that I was told, if the medication didn't help Mochi with his wheezing, then of course the next step would be to take x-rays of his lungs. And then they said that the worst thing would be that he has asthma, which is fine. Cats can live with asthma. It's manageable through steroids. So I just thought, oh my God, that is so much better than what I was thinking when we were focusing on his stomach. And that was it. That was like the worst week for us. Monday through Friday. That was a very roller coaster week of emotions and stress. And I do not recommend. It was awful. But I am very glad that I took Mochi to the vet to make sure that he was okay. Even though it did put me $2,000 in the hole. I'm still very grateful that he is still here and just as psychotic as ever. I'm just so happy he's fine. If you have any questions about my experience, or if you have an experience that you'd like to share, please let me know. I would love to read them. That's about it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I know it was a long video, but I appreciate you being here. Alright, I'm gonna sign off now. And I hope you, your family, and your pets stay well, healthy, and happy.